Good news for Nothing Phone 4B potential buyers. We now know what some of the main specs are going to be on this new Nothing Phone 4B. So we've covered this quite a bit over the last week. It's the CMF Phone 3 Pro that CMF dropped that Nothing picked up and is going to sell on July 7th. Well, there was a leak of the new phone earlier this week. Then a day or two later, there was a leak of what it looked like and a couple of specs and a teaser of a spec. And now we got the full spec. Well, it's not the full spec sheet, but it's the specs that everybody cares about. So, in one question still remains, but I think we have it answered, and that comes to SD card. But before we get there, we do have final specs. And remember, this will be launched on July 7th, but will not be launched in the United States. Good news and bad news. So we do know it is going to have a 6.7-inch AMOLED display. It's going to be 1080p plus AMOLED display. Nothing uses nice AMOLED displays, so I'm sure it's going to be very vibrant and pretty. It's going to have a Snapdragon 6 Gen 4 chipset. I'll get to the Geekbench stats here in just a second. Storage wise, it's going to have 8 gigs of RAM across the board. That's no shocker. It's only $350, so you cannot expect a loaded spec sheet, but you get what you pay for. And if you're in America, I'm going to tell you why it's not even worth considering buying. But along with 8 gigs of RAM, it's going to come in 2 storage variants. So 8 gig 128, as well as 8 gig 256. Now, I think that specific storage variant is going to cut the SD card. So earlier in the week, I thought they were going to support SD cards because the 2 CMF phones that were launched previously had SD card support. The CMF phones had 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, but you could throw a 2 terabyte SD card in there and just you could boost your RAM with a RAM expansion and then throw an SD card in there and then use your SD card for all your files, right? Store all your memory on there. Well, since they're releasing a 256 gig model, I don't think they are including an SD card slot, which sucks, but it is what it is. I'm surprised companies still offer SD cards. It's the number of phone manufacturers that still offer SD compatibility, SD card slots. It's just dropping by the year. So it does suck. I thought users would be able to essentially take advantage of an SD card slot, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Now, getting back to the specs and or the performance of this, we now know that the model number is going to be A as in Apple 005. So A005 is the model of this Nothing Phone 4B. And the scores on Geekbench. You ready for the Snapdragon 6 Gen 4? Single core score of just over 1,000 at 1088, and multi-core score at 3155. So 1088 for single core, 3155 for multi-core score at $350, not launching in America. If you really, really want one, it's probably not going to be worth it if you're in the United States, because if you're going to buy one, if you really want one, you can, but you're going to have to go on eBay to grab one. That eBay seller is going to add on an extra $100 to make a profit on that phone, right? So that bumps it up to $450. Now, if you bump up to $450, you got to look around to see what other devices are selling for, around that same price, right? Well, now you go up into a whole nother category, the mid-range category. And guess what? Nothing has a phone selling at $450. It's called the Nothing Phone 4A, which comes with much better specs than the Phone 4B. So it doesn't make, and they sell the 4A, well, the 4A Pro in America. You can pick one up at Best Buy or on Amazon. So it doesn't really make sense if you're in the US to get this Phone 4B, which is going to be released in blue, silver, and black. It just doesn't make sense. And Motorola has got the Moto Edge 70 Pro Plus right around that same price. Those specs blow away the Phone 4B and the Phone 4A Pro. So it just doesn't make sense, literally and figuratively, if you're in the US to purchase a phone 4B, adding on that extra money to purchase it on a online retailer, because there's just many more devices that are much more capable. You get much more what you pay for at 450 than at 350. So it essentially eliminates that from consideration. But stay tuned to the channel. I'll keep you up to date on everything. Peace.